Hello. You've noticed that this has been kind of my summer and spring decoration. And it was after Easter. It might change in a little bit due to fall spookiness. Anywho, uh, welcome. It's good to see everyone. I've been telling all my friends on Facebook that this is actually kind of a very, very big deal. This is an important um, message and sermon series that we're getting through. It's based on the second reading of this month of and we are in the liturgical year of the 15th Sunday after Pentecost. And our passage is continuing in Romans 13. I believe it's 12 through 20. We did Romans 13, 1 through 11 as part one of this passage. And we're answering the question, what makes a good church good? What is a good church? Buildings, lots of people, lots of programs, lots of ministries. I worked with one church that we had a worship folder we would give everyone on Sunday, and it was 4 pages of lists and lists of all these kinds of ministries and programs you could do and you could be involved with. Is that a good church? Is that a better church than a church that has only 1 or 2 things that they're doing, or just mass? What makes a good church a good church? Lots of people. I worked at a church, and again, I came from the land of mega churches, not just normal churches, but mega churches that were over 500 people, Southern California. And the first church I worked at was a church of about 800, 900 people at the time. I then worked at another church that was about 600 people at the time. And we always felt small. We always felt like we were not doing well, because down the street from us, both churches, was Saddleback Church that had an average attendance of 40,000 people. Rick Warren was the pastor there. And we always say, well, we're not Saddleback. We're a small church. We're a tiny church. But is the numbers of people what makes a good church a church? Buildings. Big buildings, great buildings, or having a building at all. Is that what makes a good church good? Well, according to St. Paul in chapter 13, he argues that it has nothing to do with numbers. He never mentions numbers in any of his epistles. Buildings, the early church couldn't have buildings at that time. Programs, never mentioned programs. All the things we think are important, St. Paul doesn't. Instead, he says it's this is that is on your hold on, I'm trying to do the I want to get the screen here. There we go. There we go. There we go. I was wondering why this wasn't happening. This is what he says is what's most important is our character and our relationships and character. That we are to hate what is evil, hold on tight what is good, be zealous, be patient, rejoice, work in harmony, be with the poor, no revenge, genuine love. These are the things that make a good church. And if you look at this list, you're going to be like me and says, I can't do all these things. Of course you can't. Should we ever try? No, we should try. However, we're to do this together, like a potluck. I can't feed 300 people, but if we all pull together and share a puis, if we put things together, then the potluck can feed everyone. This is the idea that not one Christian by themselves can do it. It's a group of Christians coming together can accomplish this list. This week's passage is more things to add to this list, but it's a reiteration of the second great commandment. Love one another, love one another, love one another. Relationships, 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 relationships. This is what St. Paul says is a good church. Is our character resembles God and our relationships with each other. Now then, here's my question. What does it look like for an Igorot church to be in Edmonton? A good Igorot church. Notice my question. And the answer should be this list. The answer should be this spider web with some of the additions that come from this week's passage. And notice I'm also saying church. For those who have been with us for 9-10 years, you are used to the question, when are we going to be a church? We have been asking two bishops now, when are we going to be a church? When? How? What do we need to do? What else do we need to prove? That we are not just who we are now, but that we could become a parish. Technically, right now, we are a Filipino congregation of St. Matthias. Now, what's a little weird about that is we actually aren't part of St. Matthias. We don't report to their vestry. We're not under their leadership. We give them money, but that's in payment of rent for using their buildings. We give $550 for the sanctuary. And now we can use their hall. For years past, we couldn't use their hall unless we rented it, in addition to that. But this year we can use their hall. It's nice. But we report directly to the bishop. We have our own vestry. We have our own corporation. We have our own officers. But we are not accountable. We are not a part of St. Matthias. And the question is, when can we move to this waiting period where we could become our own parish? And so I've asked both our bishops, Bishop Jane and Bishop Stephen, what is the process? What is that going to look like? Bishop Steve has now replied to that question with a letter. Let me read the letter to you. I'll move my head here. Dear friends, in July, I was able to meet with Patty Eric, and he was able to share with me some wonderful stories of your growth and faithfulness as a congregation seeking to live out your faith in Jesus. From the information he shared and from your yearly report, I can see reflected a congregation that cares about one another and comes together to worship God during some of the most important events in each other's lives. As you continue to support one another as a family in Christ, I give thanks for your commitment to each other and your faith. I encourage you in your ministry of reaching out to your wider community. I also challenge you to consider your financial support of the congregation. In 2024, the diocese will be ending the amount of financial support we provide. This will require your congregation to become self-supporting. This is the last benchmark necessary to begin the process of applying for parish status within our diocese. I believe that based on your growth and giving this past year, this is something you can achieve. I look forward to hearing more stories of your vibrant faith lived out with each other, and I continue to offer prayers of thanks for you all. A couple things. First off, his recommendation is based off of the number of attendance on Sunday morning, the number of programs, our vestry, our events, our baptisms, our funerals, our memorials, our everything. And then also our finances. So this is facts he's basing it off of, as well as my recommendation as priest, which I said, this is a church. These are folks who are committed, faithful to each other. This is worth fighting for. Secondly, in 2024, assistance is ending. Now, Since I've been here, we've had 40% of my salary come from the diocese. 60% comes from the offering. And a portion of that goes to St. Matthias to pay them for the rental of the building. And the rest of it goes towards that, fulfilling that 60% of my salary. At the end of this year and the beginning of next year, that 40% is going to end. There's no more money left. It's gone. And so the encouragement is we need to increase our offering just enough, and more would be great, so that we could be self-sufficient. And then he said, this is the last point, we will enter the process of becoming a parish. He can't just say, okay, you're a church now. Bam, there you go. It's a process. It's based on Article 5 of our canons and laws as an Anglican church. We'll go to the executive council. We'll go to a process of interviewing, and this process is designed to help us. It's a good thing. It's not just a hoop to jump through. It's actually to kind of shape us in becoming a successful parish that will live on forever and ever, as much as we can be in control of. So his point is, we can do this. We can do this. Now, I believe in him. I agree with him. He believes in us. And I also think St. Paul says we're doing what's right. We resemble many of the things that he says is a good church. What are the facts that support this? Let's look at them. What we need by 2024, and this is the number that scares everyone, scares me, is we need about $4,429. That is to cover the rent towards St. Matthias, assuming that it's the same next year. And it's also to cover the complete salary. Now, can we do that? Are we even close to that with our offerings? Let's look at it. In 2019, when I first joined, the average attendance, this was all the Sundays added up that we could, and then we added it together, and then we divided it by the number of Sundays we had. The average was 45. Back then, and many people remember it, that was when we were kind of big, when we felt like we were a healthy group. And folks who were part of our church 2019 said, wow, yeah, that was when we had, we asked Bishop Jane, let's be a church. He says, I don't see why not. And pick a saint name. And we picked a saint name. And then 2020 happened and the pandemic hit and we shot down to 30. And that was also when we started the diocese paying for part of my salary. In 2019, all of the money, well, I'll talk about that later. But that was when we started doing this new system. And 2020 was 30 people. It was really scary. The number one thing that I heard from people again and again was, we'll come back to church when the pandemic is over. And so with that thinking, we were down to 30. 2021, 33. More people started coming back saying, you know what, I don't think the pandemic's going to end. let's get involved. And then in 2022, it shot up to 37 people, sometimes lots of people, like on a baptism Sunday, sometimes not that many, but the average, 37. And then so far this year, based upon January to August, it's been about 40. Some mornings, not that great, although this summer actually was quite good. I don't know why, but I'm not going to argue with it. And some Sundays it was huge, but the average 40. And it doesn't take it takes more than a couple of bad Sundays to lower the number when we're doing averages. It also takes a lot of good Sundays to raise it. So 40 is the average. So that's our attendance. That's who's coming to our church. Next one. 2019, and I was beginning to say this and I stopped myself. The average giving was about 900. And that money went straight to St. Matthias. We didn't see it. It was gone. They had it. And then the salary for Johnny, who was our Patty Johnny, was paid directly from the diocese, from the bishop. And he was encouraged to begin this work, and he did a good job. He was faithful. In 2020, the most amazing thing happened. Even though we were only 30, we doubled what was being given. 2021, a little bit more. 2022, a lot more. And so far right now, we're at about an average 3,300, which is quite good, this average. Now, what's remarkable about this year as opposed to all the other years is this is the first time right now we're not in debt. Every year, we've been 2 months, 3 months, sometimes as much as 4 months behind paying back the diocese. They've been patient, they've been kind, they've been saying, don't worry, we know you're good for it. And usually around March, April, we pay off the last year. And then we move on this and, start working on the present year. This is the first year that giving has been so good that we actually have money in the bank. We're good. We're good. Now we're under the old contract that's ending, which is the 40% from the diocese and 60% from us. So the number is smaller, but we're faithful. We're doing good. And I'm amazed by how well God has been doing this. But something kind of needs to change in order for us to continue 2024. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But what are the options we have? 2 options. Number 1, let's quit. Let's give up. Let's stop. Let's find another church. We're done. We're finished. And that means there will be no Igorot church in Edmonton. None. If you join another church, it will be a European-based church with a British flag hanging in their sanctuary. Most of the board will be European immigrants or descendants from immigrants. And then a lot of the cultures and practices that we do at St. Peter's may not happen. But the dream of an Igorot church doing the things that St. Paul wants us to do, having a godly character in the neighborhood and having love relationships, an Igorot church doing that, it's done. Number 2, try and make this work. There isn't a third option. There isn't, let's just keep doing what we're always doing. That isn't there. It's not going to happen. So there's number 2, try to make this work. This is my plan. And until the bishop tells me otherwise, I'm here to still make it work. And I think we're just within reach to make it happen. It's kind of exciting. And to give up now, we're so close. But I think a change that I talked about earlier has to happen. What's that change? I'm going to tell a story. When I was 17 and my good buddy Scott was also 17, we attended, again, a mega church. And they had a Sunday school program where the kids did this program, and then the program would end either early or the church would go on longer than was expected. And so they would put the kids in a classroom, and they asked me and Scott, 2 17-year-olds, to watch these kids, make sure nothing bad happens. And then we would wait until the parents would come and pick up the kids. One Sunday, there was a boy who got up from his chair and stood on the backrest of his chair, kind of balancing. And then he jumped off his chair and tackled 3 of his friends who weren't expecting this. Like they just were talking, and all of a sudden their friend is flying at them and tackles them. He lands on them. A couple of his friends get really mad at him, and they're about ready to fight him. Like they're standing up and they're gonna fight. Some of the other kids are just crying because they got hurt by this. And there are some other kids who see this, think it's funny, and they're going to do it as well. And so they're crawling up on their chairs, getting ready to do this. And as all this is happening, like and I look to Scott. Scott looks at me, same expression. And both of us have that expression, who's going to stop this? Who's in charge? And then both he and I get the same look in our eyes, and we smile and nod. And that nod meant, no, we're in charge. Like we're the adults. We're the people in charge. It's up to us. So both he and I jump into the little pile of kids. We pull the boy off, have him sit down. The kids who are about ready to fight him, we have them sit down. I then run over to the corner, tell the kids who are trying to mimic this, don't do that. We don't do this here. Have a seat. They sit down. We're all kind of calming the whole room down, and the parents come at that moment. It's the right time. They take their kids and they leave. But there was a switch. Who's in charge? Who's going to fix this? Oh, wait a minute. I'm in charge. Oh, I guess it's up. Is the kind of change that I'm inviting you to think on in the fall, which is to say, you don't go to church. You're not visiting church. You're not stopping in and, hey, how's that Igorot church going? Oh, that's nice. Oh, okay. Hey, is there a place for my kids? Can you take care of my kids for a little bit? Okay, good. Oh, that's nice. Oh, I hope it's a good program. Oh, hey, Jonathan's singing. Hey, he's nice. I like that. Oh, hey, you need money? Oh, okay. Well, I hope someone else pays for these problems that you're going through. And I'll just be here, and then I'll come back in 6 weeks or 2 months, or, I'm visiting church. What I'm inviting is for you to be the church. For you to say, this problem of St. Peter is my problem. And what needs to happen is we need to be the church. And saying, how do we pull together and make this happen? There are some who have come and they've left and they've joined other congregations. God bless them. May they be blessed. May they experience the full grace of God, and may they grow in their faith. But for those of us who haven't, may we be the church. 3 things that need to happen. Number 1, our offerings need to be sacrificial. I know there's a couple of families who have committed to giving around $300 to $600 a month. And I am so thankful for that, because I know how sacrificial that is during this time of our economy being as it is. They do this not by cash. They don't bring cash to church. They pay for it through online giving. And there's a form. The form is available. And if you want to talk, I can tell you how to do it. It's very easy. It's what my family does, so that I don't even think about giving to the church. It just happens. And so what I'm praying for is that if there could be 3 to 4 families that give $300 a month, or there could be 2 families that give 5, maybe $600 a month, then that's it. That's all we need. That's it. But it requires a sacrifice. And that sacrifice is between you and God. I don't know who does what. I don't know who gives. And I do a lot of work not to know. And I still will not know. We had a big financial dump in July. It was beautiful, generous, but that doesn't normally happen. And it's a secret in who did that, because that's how we keep it. We keep it secret. But my prayer is that we could start doing some sacrificial giving. It's going to have to be whatever money is in the wallet. Let's just put that in the church, and then, I hope someone else pays for this. We need to be the church. And so that's my prayer. Secondly, let others know what's happening here, that we're having a good time, that God has grown us to the point where we are now, to where We are at the last benchmark, according to the bishop. I've had a lot of people tell me about the Filipino Anglican Church in Edmonton, and they don't realize, one, I'm the priest of this church, and two, a lot of their stories are wrong. Like, they're just wrong and kind of weird. And like, I'm all, oh, okay. Because I think there's a lot of people talking about us. Um, and they don't go to our church. They haven't been for a long time. And so it's going to be up to us, we, the church, that actually tell the story. And we actually have quite a bit of attention right now. We're going to be written up in the Anglican Journal of Canada, and there's been some mention of us. People are asking, and they're curious because they want to see a new church. We're really a place of God's hope in our little community. So let's tell the good stories. And then third, get involved. If you have a ministry you want to try, let's try it out. Let's do it together. Let's work together and make this happen. Can we use St. Peter to bless your ministry? Not the other way around. How can we as a church serve you so that you can, and let's be the church together. This is the dream of our bishop. This is the dream of St. Paul as he's describing this to Rome. And this is my dream too. We are not alone. We have each other. But most importantly, we have God, who can do far more than we could either ask or imagine. We pray that at the end of each Eucharist. Let's see what God does with that.